I've made this PowerPoint presentation to help you with question 1 of unit AE06K. AE stands for Auxiliary Electrical, and the K tells you it's a knowledge unit, so it's assessing your knowledge of these systems. Okay, so the assignment starts with asking you to select a vehicle from your normal place of work or college. Alright, so I would suggest you pick a vehicle that's in college and select one system each from section A and one from section B. So here's section A. You've got to pick one of these systems. So electric window, electric mirror, wiper and washer system or central locking system, and you've got to write one report about one of those. And then you've got to write another report about one of the systems in section B. Right, so the heater, cooling and air conditioning system, an integrated security of stroke warning system, a lighting system, or a supplementary restraint and airbag system. So effectively, this unit is or requires two separate reports, one for section A and one for section B. Both of them need to be 600 to 900 words long. So I would aim, to be honest, even though it says 600 to 900, when you get started you're going to struggle to get all the information in. So say 1,000 words. All right, so aim for 1,000 words each. 1,000 words for one of these systems and 1,000 words for one of these systems. So treat it as two separate reports. We would like you to present those reports as a Word document. All right, so even though the portfolio breaks it down into sections, please draft your report on one single Word document and submit that at the end. I think by now most of you have got used to doing that. So question 1, or the first section, like all of the other written assessments, requires you to provide a detailed description of the construction and operation of these two systems. So I want you to start with section A, all right, and I'm going to pick on, to be honest, any of these. The first thing I'm going to do is a basic introduction to how a permanent magnet motor works, and then the rest of this presentation is going to assume that you're working on electric mirrors. Okay, so that's just what I'm suggesting. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay, so let's start with a review of how an electric motor works, a simple permanent magnet motor. So in this diagram I've got a permanent magnet, or two permanent magnets, a north and a south pole, and I've got a loop of wire suspended between those two poles. Now in reality on a motor, this loop of wire wouldn't be one single, it would be a coil with hundreds, possibly thousands of windings in it. But essentially this diagram is just simplified. It shows that one end of this loop, or one end of this coil, is going to touch a connector allowing current to flow in, and the other end touches a connector, or this is called the commutator, and this is the brush that brushes up against the commutator, allowing the current to flow out. And basically what's going to happen when you put electricity, when you connect this supply, these two wires to a supply of electricity, current will flow in around the coil, and as we now know, that creates a magnetic field. And the magnetic field that you produce in this coil of wire will be repelled. You know, magnets either attract or repel, so these permanent magnets will repel the magnetic field that you create in this coil of wire, and as a consequence it moves away. Okay, just to kind of illustrate that, now this is a very, very simple motor that I made in the classroom, and in fact I made this one in the staff room. So I've got this here's a battery, or a cell as we should call it, piece of copper wire, and it's actually, this is a frozen frame, but there's actually a coil of wire here, and this is one end of that coil, and it's kind of resting on this piece of copper that's connected to the battery, and the other end of that piece of wire that's coiled up is resting on this end. So when we've connected it up, well, let me just run the video and see. Right, so this is a permanent magnet here, and when we connect this up, the electricity flows through the coil of wire, creates a magnetic field, and the permanent magnet repels that magnetic field, and so you can see it spinning away there. Right, so it's a really simple electric motor. So I made that in the staff room just and showed it in the classroom just so you can see a simple motor working. So I've got another, oh, sorry, let's move on. I've got another diagram here. This one's just a bit clearer than the previous one because you can actually see I've got a battery, or a cell is the proper name for that. So my current will flow into this carbon brush. Alright, so this is it's made from a material called graphite that contains quite a lot of carbon, and the beauty of that is it will conduct electricity, but it also has a very, very low coefficient of friction. So that means it's almost like a solid lubricant. It's not going to wear out. That's the good thing. So we can push this brush up against our copper. This is called the commutator because it allows the current to commute to work. So hence the name commutator. So the current will flow through the brush that brushes up against this into my loop of wire and out the other end. And you can see the red arrows indicate the magnetic force that you're going to generate, and the permanent magnets at the side here are going to repel this, and it's going to spin away. Alright, so there's the basic operation of a simple electric motor, permanent magnet motor. What we need is a coil of wire around a shaft. I'm not showing the shaft in this diagram, but a coil of wire and a commutator with some brushes that allow current to flow in and create a magnetic field. So in our electric mirror we have a permanent magnet motor that, in fact, we have two for each mirror. One motor will make the glass move up and down, and one makes the glass move left to right, or we should say that one motor controls a vertical movement and the other motor controls a horizontal movement. Okay, what I'd like to do now is to get you to look at a wiring diagram, and we'll start to look at how the circuit works. Okay, so I'm going to look up a wiring diagram for a Corsa. It's actually my wife's Corsa. So her reg number is GK14BYX. Search for that. Just check that I've got the right vehicle, Oval or Vauxhall Corsa D. It's the correct model. Okay, so I've got options of what technical data I need. Now I want to look up electrical because I'm looking up a wiring diagram. So down here you can see wiring diagrams. Click on that. Takes me to another menu. If we look on the left hand side, there's various groups of wiring diagrams. If we scroll down, sure enough, there's one for mirrors. Click on mirrors, and that brings the diagram that I want to the top of the page, so mirrors here. So I click on that, and sure enough it is taking me to the appropriate diagram, but I'm just going to zoom out so you can see a bit more of that diagram. Okay, just to reiterate some of the basics, our live feeds will come in at the top of the page. So 30 is a permanent feed from the battery, 15 is a feed that comes once you switch the ignition on, and 15A is the auxiliary. So it's also usually connected to the ignition switch, but it's so you can have the radio and things on without having the ignition switched on. So all the live feeds are along the top. Sorry, let's get rid of this. All of the live feeds are along the top, and our negative or earth feed earth return, sorry, is at the bottom. So live in at the top, earth return at the bottom, and all of our components are strung in between. Now over here I can look at what all of these components are. So I don't know, that one is a switch, but I wouldn't necessarily know that. So if I can't find the component that I want, I can look down. What I did there is just click on the drop down menu, or I can type in here. I'm going to type in switch and door mirror adjustment switch. Okay, so let's click on that and it highlights the switch. Or if I wanted to find the motor, so I'll clear that out and put motor. Put it in, motor. Would help if I spelt it right. Motor. Okay, door mirror adjustment on the driver's side or the passenger side. So let's have a look at the driver's side. Okay, it's highlighted this one on the page, taking me to it, and I'm guessing that, there you go, that would be the passenger side. Okay, so that's how to use the drop down menu on that side. Now then, let's just consider the diagram in general. Just centre that a bit for you. I'll move that to one side. Okay, so we know our live feeds come in from the top, and we also know that these are our, the reason we've got two switches on this diagram, let's just clarify there, that's because there are two different types of switch that are available on this model car. Now the one that's highlighted now is just a very basic one. It would allow the driver to move the mirror vertically, so up and down, or horizontally, left and right. Whereas this other switch over here has an extra element to it, which I believe is for the electric windows. So this switch would be in a car that has electric windows. But you can see that they share, a common feed, and all this diagram is doing is it's splitting at this point depending on which switch type I've got, and then all of the connections coming out of the switch are the same. Okay, so I've blown up the section of the diagram for the switch just so you can see it a bit clearer, and because there's a couple of things that I wanted to point out. The first thing that's worthy of note is that there are two parts of the switch. So the upper part here, this is a part of the switch, and the lower part, I'm going to refer to them as. Now this lower part here, so the contact here can move to connect to the green wire, so pin number 4, or it can swing across to the right as we look at it to connect to pin number 8 and allow current to flow through the blue wire. So this part of the switch is the bit that switches between the passenger side and the driver's side, or the left and the right mirror. Just to show you that, there's this diagram here. It's not the actual switch, but this is one that I found on the internet, just so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'd slide this switch across this side to control the left hand mirror, or that way there to control the right hand mirror. And as I say, that is done in this section here of the diagram. The upper part, well, we'll talk about that a bit in a bit, but that's what controls which way the mirror moves, up or down, the left or right, or whatever it might be. Now the other thing that I wanted to point out is that all of the connections to the switch are numbered. So our live feed is coming in through pin number 1, and then we've got pin number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, etc, etc. Now that's important because yes, you can see the coloured wires, but it's also important to know the pin numbers as well. Now I'm just going to show you in the next slide. Now that's the switch that we saw a moment ago, but if I flip that over, and hopefully it's a bit blurred, so I apologise for that, but you can just make out these are the connections that the loom will plug into, or plug onto, whatever way you want to say it. But you can see the numbers. There's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7. So each connection on the switch has a pin number which would correspond with the diagram. Now, as I say, that switch doesn't correspond to this diagram, but it's just to show you what sort of things to look for. I'll just blip through here. Now, here's again, these are pictures that I just found on the internet. But you can see the loom also has pin numbers. There's number 1, there's number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and so on. Excuse me. There's just some more examples. Okay, you can see the numbers clearly: 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, blah blah blah, and so on. Alright, okay, so it's important that you can see those numbers. Okay, so I've zoomed out so that you can see the passenger side motor, and I'm going to use this switch here just because it's slightly easier to work with, but essentially these are the same thing. Okay, so we can see the switch and the motor on the same page. Now the bottom part of this switch, you need to understand that's you connect it to either the blue or the green, and that's going to, if you look at the two motors down here, the blue goes to this side and the green goes to this side. So flicking this part of the switch determines which mirror we are adjusting. So this one was the passenger side, so we're going to flick this one across to the blue, and we're going to control this mirror here. Now the top part of the switch, you need to work with me on this. Let's go with it. So our live feed is coming in from the top down to this. The large dot shows that it's a joint. Alright, so an electrical connection, that electricity can flow from there to anything that's connected to it. So it's going to flow down to this connection here, it's going to flow to this connection here, and it's also going to flow to this connection here. Okay, but where these wires cross here, right, there is no large black joint. So this wire here is not connected to this wire here, right, because there's no big black dot indicating that they're soldered or joined together. Okay, right, so you can see the two little arrows here, an arrow here, so this part of the switch can move left or right as we look at it on the diagram. So for a start, I'm going to ask you to imagine that we push it to the right. So what that's going to do, that's going to make this part of the connector, the switch, sorry, connect here. Alright, remember that's our live feed in, so we'll have live voltage connected to here, and we've already connected it to the blue side, if you remember. So it'll come down through the blue wire, down through this one, into the motor, this motor here, and it will travel through the motor and earth out through our grey and red wire here. Let's just follow the grey and red wire. Right, you can see it earths out. Let's just move that up. So these, the two motors on the driver's side are also sharing the same earth connection. So the earth will come up. Let's go and remember that connects to this. Sorry, just drag that back down again. Alright, so this central pole at this moment in time will be our earth connection. Now remember, we moved everything to the right, so that's going to be connected to this one here, which, if we follow that back through all of these connections, is connected to pin number 2, which is a black wire, and we'll follow the black wire down, trace that back through, and you can see that goes to ground or to earth. So that is our earth connection. So let's just recap. If we push this all to the right hand side, our current will flow through the blue wire, down through the motor, and return to earth through the grey and red wire, which is also connected to this black wire. So we get a complete circuit. And then let's say that's going to move our mirror up. Alright, so this motor here is the up and down motor, and this motor here is the left and right motor. So we figured out how to make our motor go up. What we need to do to make it go down is to reverse polarity. Alright, so make the current flow the other way, that means. So what we're going to do now is we did have our switch pushed across to the right, and what I'm going to do now is push it across to the left. Alright, so now this part of the connection is going to make contact here instead of here. So remember, this is the earth side. Alright, so now the blue wire becomes the earth wire. And what's also going to happen here is this central connection, which is connected to the grey and the red wire, will also be pushed across this way. So that now becomes the live. So the grey and the red now become the live. So current will flow through this way and up through the motor, through the blue connection to our earth connection. Okay, hopefully you've followed that. Alright, I'm going to stop there.